folks, we are live once again. We are back. You are listening to Beyond Sight and Sound. I am your host, Josh Kimmel, aka Treasure Seeker. Comes in many shapes and forms. You just gotta get out there and find it. Sometimes, that means you've gotta be a little more diligent than the next guy. Sometimes, it means you've gotta be a little more versatile. Sometimes that versatility of the hunter really dictates the success of your hunt in any given environment and situation. Which brings to mind tonight's guest. Tonight, I'm actually joined with Mr. Leighton Harrington, well-known hunter in the hobby, over 40 years in the hobby. Actually, I believe 43. And he has done quite well for himself. Many of you have seen his posts, seen his finds, and he is very diligent and versatile, and has learned over the years the value of being a versatile hunter. And we will be covering some topics on the advantage of being versatile tonight. Also, I am joined with Kenny Moore, Dirt Bandit 33. So we will bring everybody in, see how things are going, and get this rolling. How's it going, guys?
Hey, good evening, Josh. How are you? Good evening, Kenny.
Not bad. Not bad. Of course, doing a little better than up there in your area, I guess. It's, sounds like you're getting quite a bit of snow.
Oh, yeah. We've had over 70 inches here in the last 2 or 3 weeks. It's been quite the winter for us so far, and we're expecting another 12 tomorrow night.
And with all that snow, you still managed to find a spot to dig.
Well, here you go. That's a good way to open the topic there, being versatile. If you're landlocked and you got that frost down to 30 inches or so, you're certainly not going to dig any coins, that's for sure. So, we migrate, or I migrate towards the water. Right.
Yeah, I know up here in Ohio, I can't get through the ground with anything right now.
Yeah, well, I'm assuming that Kenny still doesn't quite have the frost that we do down there where he's at, but up here, like I said, we've got a good 24, 30 inches of frost, and we just find ourselves getting out in the water, even if it's just wet sand hunting. When you've got this addiction called metal detecting, and I think I would fall into that category, being 43 years in the making. So you always learn new tricks, and you got to get out there wherever you can. It's not always about finding, but it's always the quest, right?
Right. At least you're getting out there and you're making the attempt to do the best that you can.
Exactly. We were briefly talking before the show. It wouldn't surprise me, because I'm not alone in this now. You got to realize I'm in a very populated area. It won't surprise me to see 15 or 20 guys spread out over a couple of miles tomorrow, because they're landlocked just like I am. So even guys that have land machines will certainly be out there in the water or near the water's edge for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, after you've been locked up for so long, you're looking for any potential possibility to get out and dig.
That's for sure. So we'll make the best of it, and maybe we can report up tomorrow on the Facebook page and let you know how we made out.
Yeah, hopefully it turns out well. I guess for those who may not know, why don't you go ahead and give the listeners a rundown. How did Leighton get started in the hobby? What bit the bug for you?
Well, my dad and my uncle, his brother, had a coin shop, a small one, in a small town. And as you know, venues used to come to town and they'd try to sell their product. And back then it was the new age metal detecting. And back in '72, everybody wanted to find more coins, and we didn't realize exactly what was in the ground or what it was going to take us over our long period of time. But anyway, the venue came in and sold my uncle and my dad a half a dozen metal detectors. And at the end of the year, just like cars, there's leftovers. Well, lo and behold, we got the last two at cost. And in 1972, that's when the bug bit me. So my dad, I was 12 years old. I was still riding a bicycle, obviously, and we lived on the beach. And my land hunter metal detector I was always told not to go in the water with it because it didn't have a waterproof coil. But I was finding a lot of coins up on the dry sand in the beach. We grew up on the beach, and I'll never forget the first two coins I ran back to my house with: a Walking Liberty $50 and a Standing Liberty quarter.
Wow, what a way to start out.
Well, again, you got to remember, back in the early 70s, later part of the 60s, this is all virgin territory. I remember actually even being down on the beach in the summertime, taking a stick and just sliding it across the top of the sand in a back and forth motion and actually finding coins. So you can imagine what an advantage I had as a child with a metal detector. It was, scoops weren't even heard of at that point. We were just kicking the sand to the side and thumbing through it with our hands, hoping to find the stuff.
Right, kind of the golden era of detecting.
Absolutely. Was not uncommon to come back home with $5 or $10 after a full day's hunt of silver coins, amongst the clad. Like I said, early 70s, we still, even though the silver had been recalled and melted, it was still prevalent in the ground for us newer guys that were getting into the hobby.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting, too, that you said you were always told you don't want to get the coil in the water, don't get the coil wet. So even that early on in detecting, people had thought about the potential of the water hunters.
Yeah, we couldn't wait to wait for. I'll tell you what. I learned to read the beach really quick as a youngster. I learned to go in the low spots or washouts after a heavy rain. If there was a small local storm, and we'd get that southwest prevalent wind, I found myself always going to the areas that were cut up, and these were, like you say, in your words, gold mines. These were places where you couldn't swing the coil in any one direction, left or right, without getting multiple hits. So you didn't move very far. Let's say as much as you would today. It's not uncommon to walk a half a mile or a mile on the local beach and dig maybe 20 or 30 holes, whereas, you might dig 20 or 30 holes in a 10 by 10 square back then. That's
a good point.
Yeah, big difference. Big difference.
And I imagine...
And a lot less trash, believe it or not, too, back then.
Really?
Yeah, a lot less trash. We were still finding our occasional beer cans and everything, but you got to remember, back then we were still getting the pull tabs that you pulled completely off.
Right, the beaver tails.
The beaver tails, exactly. Whereas now, you've got the ones that you have to rock back and forth, and you know how that story goes. So.
Yeah, I don't get that. You got to work to tear them off, but you find them all over the place. People are all the time throwing them out.
Yeah, it's a sad situation with the pollution, but it is what it is, and I do my part. I can't tell you how many I've had to dig to get one ring only, but
right.
I'd rather not even say how many.
I even had a conversation with a gentleman earlier this morning. He was talking about a spot that he's been told that, or at least assumes, that there shouldn't be really any pull tabs or any trash because they were always meticulous about the groundskeeping. And I told him, I said, well, the funny thing about the pull tab, I said, once one gets in there and it gets into the ground, there's this strange phenomenon that happens where they start to breed like bunnies.
That's funny, because I was about to say the same thing. They spawn.
Exactly. You may think there's none there, but you'll find them. That's the way it goes, though. But I guess maybe back in like 72, the early mid-70s and stuff, maybe people were still a little more, I don't know, environmentally minded in a sense, where they didn't litter as much or something.
Well, I'll tell you, we did find our share, don't get me wrong. I don't want to perceive that there wasn't a whole lot of trash. There was certainly a lot of trash.
Oh,
but
yeah.
It just doesn't seem, to me, maybe because as I got older, I was a little more aware of our environment. And, today everything is being recycled and right down to the lead. I mean, even the lead we pull out of the water, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, it's, I think overall we're helping, and, it's not a bad thing to pull lead out of water. I mean, I don't know about you, but especially in fresh water, I mean, even some of our reservoirs, you're not supposed to fish in our state in a reservoir, but you certainly can find some lead.
Oh, yeah.
Well, from where I'm from, pulling lead out of the water is a good thing because it usually has 3 rings around it.
Good point.
I like it.
Good point. I always seem to be plagued with that issue of, because I live near a lake, a reservoir, whatever. The name has changed over the years. They did call it a reservoir, then they called it a lake, and really it's a big mud puddle. But I run across fishing weights that you really wouldn't expect to find. We're talking ounce and a half, 2 ounce weights.
Yeah, that's pretty big for a freshwater lake, I would have to admit. I mean, there's one particular lake we've been hunting here in the last 4 years or so. We've been doing very well with the old gold. Come to find out, there was an old raft. Once I did the overlay, as we were talking about earlier, with the map system. We found an old area that had the raft, and we were out there, and I can't tell you, there was like 6 and 8 ounce sinkers out there. Are you kidding me? What are these kids using?
Well, I tell you guys, I fish. I'm a fisherman, and a lot of these lakes, especially if they've got striper in them, or if they're trolling for anything, a lot of times they'll use those heavier weights to counterbalance what they're pulling, and that's why you get those big weights like that.
It's crazy. I guess to get down a little deeper, I would imagine, right?
Well,
Right.
what they try to do is they try to find, there's I can't think now, but there's a part of the water about halfway up that's got a warm spot in it. And that's where they try, that's where, the thermocline, that's where a lot of the fish are hanging. That's what they try to reach.
Right. Yeah.
Ah.
I know, it does surprise me to see the different objects, too, that you pull out. I mean, I've gotten everything from, fishing reels to rods, old fly rods broken in half. You pick up the ferrules that are out in the water. You name it, it's out there.
I was fishing for
Stop signs.
flathead up in Kansas City at a lake called Smithville about 2 years ago. Hung into something that was big. Finally got it out, and it was a Safeway grocery shopping cart. So, I mean, it's out there in the middle of the lake, and I'm thinking, okay, somebody better look for Granny because
Yeah.
that's a long. I mean, they had to throw it off a boat. It was the only way it could have got there.
I can just see that, man. I got a whopper here.
Yeah. Or how about maybe, does that lake ever ice up and maybe they pushed it out there and then it sank?
Oh, that's a
That
possibility.
particular lake, no.
Oh.
It just doesn't ice up thick enough to do that.
Yeah, so definitely out on a boat somehow. What are people
Yes.
thinking?
Now, I got a
don't
question
know.
for
You gotta
you.
wonder.
I got a question for you. You were talking about wet sand.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
What's your machine of choice, wet sand versus dry land, and how do you counterbalance the ground balance? Because I take it that the wet sand's going to give off a little bit different than your regular land.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
question.
it will. Good
Yeah,
question.
I was going to say, I don't know about you, Josh, but up here in what I consider wet sand is where the high tide would go its uttermost highest from that point and then work its way back down to the mud flats. That's
Right.
what I consider the wet sand. Now, the wet sand I use, my choice, my arsenal is an Excalibur Mine Lab. I have the 2, and I always use it in all metal. So as far as falsing goes, I still have to tweak it a little bit, Kenny. And, you know, I can, so in other words, so that I can still swing it, but still be reasonable where it's not really chattering in my head. So that's my choice. Dry, I use a MindLab CTX 3030 with a special program that I've made over the past couple of years. And what I mean by special is it really isn't all that special as far as anyone else's program, but what it does have that everyone else doesn't have is 3 tones. I've got my low tone for my gold, I've got mid tone for all my clad coins, and my silver or sterling or any kind of silver coins is a very high-pitched tone. So I can cherry-pick, whereas, you know, other guys are just going in there and hoping to, or they are actually digging every single tone, versus where I just go in there. If today I know it's a new spot for me, I'll go in there and just do just the high tones today.
Right, and you just discriminate the iron.
I do not use discriminate in my CTX only until I have already feel like I've done the area pretty good. I always use it in open array.
There you go.
Which is a good point.
Yeah.
Because if really, when you get out there, especially with a new spot, if you're running discrimination, you're missing targets. You're missing good finds.
You are. I can tell you another little thing I throw in there every now and then. Let's say I've been hunting the same area, but a new area to me, for let's say a week. And I'm starting to kind of run out of targets here and there. That's when I start switching coils. The CoilTech 10x5 that we've talked about in the past has been phenomenal. This is quite the separation, which you might actually find very good on your end over there, Kenny. Not sure what you're swinging yet, but I'd like to know. Yeah, that CoilTech coil, that elliptical coil, has been incredible, especially in the springtime when you have a lot of targets in an area that you feel as if you've done over many years, over and over and over, and there's a lot of targets that are close together, junk included.
Right.
You know,
yeah,
well,
I
here,
like getting in there in the areas like that.
When you're going through, let's say you're here and let's say you're in a camp, for example.
Sure. Yep.
And let's say, of course, my favorite camps is camps that everybody said it's all been hunted out. I mean, that's my favorite camps to go. And when you go to those camps, in that scenario, it's more about frequency. Because I want to go, because, you know, anything that's usually 3 or 4 inches deep has probably been picked. So, you know, if you're running 17, you want to drop to maybe 11. And then you may even want to drop to 4 if you have that availability. Is exactly why I'm using the XV Deus now, opposing to what I was using, which was the Garrett AT Pro and Gold, which I still use.
Right, which is not to say they're bad machines.
No,
you still use them.
But let me tell you something. Any time that you can get into a scenario like that and change your frequency on the fly, that it's just, I mean, you cannot beat that. That's an arsenal you must have if you're in a place that's been hunted. You need to go a little deeper. For example, I was at Shiloh the other day. And just to test this machine out, we pulled a bullet. This bullet was 14 inches. That's an 11-inch coil, and I am maxed out on 800 on the tone. Okay? However, my silence was on 1. When I went to 0, I swung back over it, and it was like that item went about 2 inches deep.
Yep.
If you haven't tried the Deus, you should. And I'm not trying to sell a Deus. I'm just saying. But I mean, I was unbelievably impressed with that machine.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, at that depth, when you're in a place like that, because you know you got deep row plowed here, you got these fields that's been plowed for years, and stuff churns, stuff is 2 or 3 deep. You got fire pits that you can. We were pulling bullets out 3 foot deep. Well, none of your machines are going to grab that. Right. You know, with the exception of maybe, you know, 4,500 or 5,000 GPX may, you know, get close to that. But there's even some of that's not going to happen.
Right.
But changing frequencies on the fly is the way to go here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and sensitivity too. I might add. I mean, I've got a perfect scenario. 3 weeks ago, we had a small cut, wasn't very big. 4 guys had gone down on the beach. They'd been pounding it for about 6 or 7 days. I heard about it a little on the late side because I'm about an hour away. Went up there and pulled out right in back of 2 other gentlemen that had been working that small cut. I got 2 gold rings and a gold chain. And that was only by actually using my sensitivity, which I normally use at around 14 or 15 on my CTX. I boosted it to 27. I could still swing. It wasn't so bad where I couldn't hear, but it was enough to make me slow down and really pay attention. And again, these things are, like he just said, 14 inches deep.
Yeah, now that's interesting. Have you noticed, with you running your sensitivity normally around 14, 15, and then boosting it up a little bit like that, did you notice, say, a dramatic increase in depth, or just a little bit of an increase?
Not a whole lot. I'd say maybe a couple inches, not a whole lot. Here's my rule of thumb. If I'm not finding anything, I always try to do a couple things. One, put myself in a spot that I'm going to find something. And 2, if my machine isn't working the way I feel it should be working, and I'm just swinging for nothing, I make it work for me. So that's where your versatility has to come in. You've got to really stop playing with some of these buttons. I'm not saying go crazy and get it so far out of your norm that you're not used to, or it's not working so that you get frustrated with it. But just do it one notch at a time. Right. I have 2 mud back bay areas that I use this time of year, and I'll tell you what, both of them are different. One has more sediment because there's not so much tidal flow in there. So over the last 200 years, all the oil, the grime, the grease, the muck, everything that's in there at that particular spot, it only allows me to go up to 16. Otherwise, it goes so crazy that I can't even swing the machine. But yet, out in the ocean, I can go, a little higher. I see you got a call there. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, caller.
Somebody mentioned a dais.
Yeah, I think we heard a little bit about one.
Great show, Leighton, by the way. You're an awesome guest. And Mr. Josh.
Thank you.
I'm a white user. I'm a white believer. I used the dais one time and got mine in today after using one.
And the first time out with that, you made a nice coin find.
1852 half dime.
Ooh,
but we just found out the find of the day. We didn't know what it was. We just found out. John, with his dais, found a mold to the word and popped on my head. A mold to counterfeit half reals.
Oh, nice!
Wow. I'll tell you what, he's been on fire with that thing lately, hitting that Marshall shell and now that counterfeit piece.
And seeing is believing. I mean, I told John today it was tough for me to open up a box that says "Made in France" on it.
Yep.
Because I'm a big United States fan. I love the United States. I stand behind them. But I mean, it honestly I think is the best machine made, and I'm not down in anything else because I could go in an area and wipe it out so there's nothing left, and Leighton could come up behind me and still find stuff. So nothing's ever hunted out, and all the machines are made for a reason because you have different people with different tastes.
Right. And they just have to find what works for them.
Yeah, and the one thing the CTX 3030 does that the dais doesn't do is the dais you have to choose what frequency you run, and if I'm not mistaken, doesn't the CTX run in a bunch of different frequencies at one time?
Yes, sir.
It is a multi-frequency machine.
Right, so that's where the CTX is. The technology is a little better than the dais because of that. Because just like Leighton was saying, you can go into a little area, and if somebody comes in there with a one frequency machine, they might think they've hunted it out, but it's not true. You can go there with that multi-frequency machine and start finding stuff, and you just slow down a little bit. You know, people up there swinging like they're swinging a golf club or a baseball bat and wonder why they're not finding anything.
Right.
By the way, if I could just throw my 2 cents in there, I like people like that.
Oh, yeah, because they're missing that stuff.
I'm just saying, buddy.
That's right.
I agree. And you know, when you tell people, hey, you need to slow down a little bit, a lot of them get offended. You know, hey, I've been swinging this machine for 15 years. But then you hear them, well, you know, I had to take my machine, send it to the shop, and I borrowed my friend's machine, and I found all kinds of stuff in my front yard I didn't find before. He said, and they think it's just the machine. Well, it's a lot of things. You slow your swing down a little bit. You might speed it up a little bit. You know, some machines work better at a fast speed. My labs work better at a little slower speed. But, you know, that's the reason why so many detectors are made, just like golf clubs. You've got to make a bunch of different golf clubs because you can't just use one.
That's right.
Low and slow, buddy. Low and slow.
Yeah, and the Deus, you can change the frequency, so that helps. The CTX 33 runs on multi-frequency, which you don't have to change.
Right.
But, you know, and that's the technology nowadays. The upgrades. If somebody says, hey, I want the screen to look like this, my lab could do it if they want to. They just do a firmware update, you download it on your computer, and you're done.
That's true. You don't have to send it back to the factory for an upgrade.
Right. And if these other if these other companies don't catch up and get with the times, they're gonna, I've got a top 5. I've always said it, and I never put XP Deus in it because I've never used one. So I couldn't put them in the top 5 of who I think was the best manufacturer because I never used one. I've used MyLab and Fisher, Garrett, White's. And, between MyLab and XT, they're number 1, number 2. Whether XT's number 1 and MyLab's number 2 or vice versa, it doesn't matter. They're still number 1 and number 2 because of the technology.
Right. For many hunters, they are considered one of the top machines.
Well, I'll tell you, I was a White's guy for 35 years, much like yourself there. Years and years of technology. They've come a long way. I went all the way up from the XLT all the way to the V3, and I had a chance, I had a friend who had the CTX, and from one day of use, I must say I was a believer. So I will tell you what I have in my arsenal today. I have 2 machines. They're both MineLabs. One's the XCal, which the processor isn't quite as fast as the CTX, but both great machines for what they are made for. So, again, it's as good as the user. Every machine has its own little thing, it's only as good as the user, right?
That's right.
Right. Now, the XCal is a water machine, right?
Yes, sir, it is.
Yeah. And honestly, it's probably one of the better water machines that's probably ever been made.
I think so. There are a lot of them. Garrett makes a great Infinium. That's a fantastic machine. In fact, they've just come out with another one that's also used in the water.
Yeah, the ATX.
That's right. It's a great machine. I've heard all great reviews. Have I used either one of the Garretts? Well, I'm an old believer, as I'm sure a lot of you guys are out there, and gals that are swinging nowadays. If it's not broken, don't fix it. I'm doing okay.
Exactly.
So I feel like I really know both of my machines. I only have 2 left. Those are the 2 I have. And by choice. I have since, sold off all my other stuff, and as I get older, less is best.
That's right.
Absolutely.
All right, well, I'm gonna get off here. Josh, great show. Leighton, great guest, and I'm gonna get off here and listen to y'all talk some more.
All right. Thanks for the call, Kevin.
All right, bye.
And that's back to the versatility bit. That is one advantage, is that for those of us who have had some time in the hobby, a lot of times it does seem like we possess more gear than somebody just coming into the hobby, or whether that's different diggers, different scoops, various machines, because of the fact that you do have to in order to be versatile like this, it may require that you use a different machine, or a different frequency, a different program, an aftermarket coil. Any of that helps bring those finds out and turns these worked over spots into new areas again.
Absolutely. I just put a video out where I put a 17 by 15 double D nail made for the AT Pro. I went to that area that's been hammered for 20 years. I was pulling Maynard bullets out at 14 inches deep. It was just ridiculous. So,
right.
You gotta adapt to wherever you're hunting, and don't be afraid to try new things, but
right.
don't get away from what you're used to either.
Right.
So, but don't be afraid to step out of the box, because that's we all learn. I learn something every day. Matter of fact, there's stuff that I read and listen to and watch other people's videos, and I do the best that I can, and it doesn't help being in a great place to hunt as well. But you got to be sure and use everything that's there for you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, the availabilities of all different things that are at your fingertips nowadays is just remarkable. And you know as well as I do, you can punch anything into Google and find something out about it. If you didn't know about it, you'll definitely learn real quick.
Oh yeah, it's very nice for helping to identify those certain finds that we're unsure of.
Right. Well, yeah, absolutely, yeah. All you got to do is just read a little bit of the word. If you can get that much off of a coin, I've done it many times myself.
Right.
You find 1700s coins with just a few letters that are visible or legible, and if you can get somewhat of a date, or if not even no date, punch that into Google and hit photos, and you're going to have an array of coins that are exactly what you have in your hands.
Right. And next thing you know, you're going, oh, so that's what it is.
Yeah, I had this happen to me just a few weeks ago. I had a 1724 Portuguese coin, had no idea what it was, never saw one in my life, and here I've got one in my hands, and I could only read a few letters on the back, and sure enough, that's exactly what it was. It was a Portuguese coin. So, these are things that are readily available to us as the consumers. It's a great thing to do. And if I could just throw out that thing that we were talking about a little bit earlier, too.
Absolutely.
I use a site, for those of you who don't know, I use a site, it's called Card Cow. It's a great little site, and what I use it for is, in my area of New England, it's rich with history, all the way back, and even before, the Pilgrims. We're not too far away from the Pilgrim Rock, 1600s, Cape Cod, Sandwich area was established in 1630s. We have some serious history here.
Absolutely.
And no doubt.
It's just crazy. And if you do your homework, you too, if you come to this area, will find, with permission, some areas that are virgin. And I use Card Cow to put myself, like I said a little earlier, in the right spots at the right time. Now, it doesn't mean I'm going to be out there in the winter at the time trying to do a field. You got to use a little bit of common sense there. And I use the Card Cow. Basically, what it does is it gives me areas to see what used to be there, not what isn't there now.
Right.
So when you punch in a place like Plymouth Rock, I can see where the original rock was. Has nowhere even close to Plymouth. It was originally in Provincetown, which is 70 miles away. So these are things that you learn. It's a great little historical piece of info, and it's good for finding like local parks, schoolyards, some of your old stone schoolhouses that were built early 1700s. Those are the places that you want to see what it looked like before you even get there. Do your homework.
Right, or for those that are in the areas where the history may not go that far back, they could use it for the old swimming holes, picnic groves. Absolutely.
It is, you know what? It's only as limited as your imagination. That's all I can tell you.
Exactly.
And, that's what's so cool about this hobby and where we live is, and of course England, that's a whole nother story. But, But I mean, it's like I have people sending me messages going, man, I've got some right here I could read, but I'm not. I mean, I'm just saying, they'll say, I would give anything, man, to be able to find a Civil War bullet, and that's cool. But I would, man, to stand on Plymouth Rock or wherever it is and find a 1600 coin or find a Cologne coin, I've never done that. So it's like I've not been able to go and find stuff like that, even though I'm down here finding Civil War history and maybe some Spanish American War and, you know, different stuff like that. There's a lot of history down here in the South.
Sure.
But it's different. I mean, it's a different time, different environment, different history.
Right, a different type of history.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for us, Kenny, to go out in a cornfield or, as you put it, you would find 3-ringers and mini balls down there. Up here, we find a lot of colonial coppers. I mean, a lot.
4440, you're on the air.
Hey, how are you tonight?
All right, who do we have?
You got Steve Zazulik from Canada.
Well, Steve, how's it going, buddy?
Good, how are you?
Not bad, not bad. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, just listening to you guys up here. I would like to say we got more snow than Leighton, but I don't think we do.
You know you don't, buddy. Hey, how you doing, Steve?
If anybody can give you competition, though, I'm sure Steve's country can.
Man, I'll tell you.
You know, you guys gotta ask Leighton about the different places that he's detected other than the water, too, because I've been with him. I've been fortunate enough to be with him to be in some pretty incredible spots. Like, Leighton and I have gone through the woods, and we've had a chance to go into native caves. He's got stories. You gotta ask him about the monkey tree story. That's another one. He's got some incredible stories that you gotta get him on tonight.
Now that sounds like an interesting story. We'll have to get into that.
Thanks, Steve. I can't say it as good as the historian, but yeah, that's quite a story.
Right, and Steve has done quite well for himself with finds over the years.
Oh, are you kidding me?
I have. Go ahead, Leighton.
I was just going to say, I would like to have found just half as much as what you got, buddy. You've got some incredible finds over your life. And yes, I know it's only in a short period of time, but honestly, you've done very well for yourself, buddy.
Well, and he's very diligent, and that shows something, you know, it translates to time and effort in the field. You're not just going to go out there and, well, not normally anyway, go out there and in the first 10 minutes pop that great find. You've got to put in your time, and people see, oh, wow, look at all the things that this guy's finding. Well, sometimes you got to stop and think, too. Look at the time that he puts in.
Right, exactly. I know.
Yeah, to my wife's dismay. Everybody always asks me, they'll say, like I haven't detected anywhere near as long as you guys have, or especially Leighton. But in my first year of detecting, I logged over 600 hours of detecting. So I was out there, 10, there was days where I was coming home at like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. I got the bug real bad. And the biggest problem is I had some really good sites to go to. So, right. Yeah, that was a bit of a problem.
That's called beating the bush.
Yeah, a little bit much. But like I say, I've had the opportunity to go out there and hunt with Leighton, and Leighton has a security box that's probably the size of a cargo container, and it is full of the rings that I love finding rings. I don't know about you guys, but I love finding gold rings. It's a weird thing, but I like finding gold rings. And
well, nothing Leighton wrong with that.
And Leighton, I don't think there's anyone out there that I know who's honest about it that has found as many rings as Leighton.
Oh, I know. He seems like a ring magnet.
Yeah, he's either finding them or stealing them.
Yeah, from the next Detectorist, right? Nice. I owe you, buddy.
Yeah. No, but in all seriousness,
I appreciate all the compliments for sure.
Yeah, in all seriousness, the guy has definitely put in his time detecting.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Paying the
that.
dues, man. Paying the dues.
That's right. It's kind of like college in a sense. Those of us that have had the years in the hobby and stay persistent about it, it's like you said, Kenny. We're just paying our dues. It's like the tuition of the hobby.
Right.
You've got to put your time in.
Just when you think you found like, wow, how am I going to tot this? Then, just keep swinging and you will.
That's right. Eventually you're going to put it over something that's worthwhile, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
I know. I think I even put you over a good one, didn't I, Steve?
Did you?
Oh.
I'm trying to remember.
Just say yes.
I was going to say, it sounds like there's a story there, too.
Well, let's put this real quickly, Steve. Remember, I took you to the back bay.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, yeah. So he did get his gold ring that day. Yeah, he got his gold ring that day. Right after I got an 8 real and I think I got a gold ring too, just before you. But you did get one.
That was a good spot.
That was a good spot.
And
sounds like it was a good day.
You know what I'll do is I'll post that video on YouTube tonight and try to put a link to you guys so you can actually see us doing that. Because what happens is Leighton's down there with one of his buddies, and these guys decide to start pulling out their D rings. So for those people out there that don't know what a D ring is, I didn't know what a D ring is because I didn't have enough to put on one. But a D ring is like a carabiner that the guys carry, and it has. How many rings was on that D ring that you guys brought out lately?
I think John brought his. I didn't bring mine that day, but I think he had about 20 or so on it, just to show you what we do.
Like grief.
Yeah.
Like big. I'm talking like big golf ball size rings. It was just disgusting.
Yeah.
So your D ring is basically a holster for your finds.
That's
right,
correct.
exactly.
Yeah.
I carry one with me a lot of times too. If I find a ring, I'll pop it on there. That way it's not in the pouch or anything like that.
Or so that we don't lose it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the biggest fear, isn't it? Is when you find a good ring and you know you want to keep hunting, is what do you do with that ring?
Exactly.
Right.
And I actually, last year we premiered the new and unheard of style of metal detecting known as catch and release.
Catch and release.
I had wound up, a buddy of mine had found 3 silver dimes and lost 2 of them in a group of kids. We went over to try to find them, and I popped a ring and wound up losing it about 15 minutes later.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Well, it was just cheap bling, but, it's still a nice chunk of a ring. It made some newcomer to the hobby very thrilled to find it, I'm sure.
Right. Well, this
a friend of mine. Go ahead, Leighton.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You're the guest. Go ahead.
A friend of mine was detecting in the water, and he was on a really good beach, and he got 4 gold rings in the morning, really nice ones, and he put them in his side bag, and I think he even got a couple silvers that day. It's like 6 rings, put them in the bag, and then at the end of the day when he walked out, reached down by his side and the bag was gone.
Oh, man.
So I've been looking for that bag ever since.
I'm sick just to hear it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Jeez.
That kind of
It's probably on Leighton's table right now.
That's a good one, Kenny.
In the coffee table display case.
There you go, buddy. Shh. Yeah, so the reason for the carabiner, though, is, and I'll tell you, I also fastened that to my pouch inside, and I'll drop it down on a lanyard, so that way it's not going anywhere once I've clipped it. So for the people that are thinking about doing something like this, by all means, these are all true stories, and it does happen. And yes, I have lost a ring or two over the 40 years. Fortunately, I don't swing very fast, and where I did lose them wasn't very deep, so I was able to relocate them. So almost like you said, a catch, release, and a catch.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess it does happen to all of us from time to time.
Oh, yeah.
And like I said, with mine, it was cheap bling, so I wasn't really all that concerned about it. It's like, well, you know, we'll leave it for the next guy.
Well, I tell you what happened to me, and I don't like telling it, but since everybody, it does happen to everybody. And the first rule of thumb anymore, never put nothing on your bumper, on your back bumper. Just don't do it at all, because it's not fun, you know, trying to redetect 20 miles, trying to find something. I had a cavalry button that I had pulled out of Eastport, Mississippi, and stupid me set it on the bumper. I loaded all my gear and stuff, and I didn't even realize it till I got, got home. And I'm like, well, where is that button at? And then I'm thinking, no. So I drove all the way back out there. Of course, nothing. Lo and behold, a year later, I found that button.
Oh, wow.
I did. I found it. It fell off about 100 yards right out of the entrance of where I was going is where I found that button.
Wow. Looks like the house is filling up, guys. We're joined by Denny Morrison and Chris Engel.
Hello, Brother Josh.
Hello, Chris.
How's it going?
All right.
Great show tonight, guys. Leighton, awesome guest.
Yes, you're on with myself, Leighton Harrington, Steve Zazulik, and Kenny Moore.
Hello, Brother Kenny.
Hey, brother. How you doing?
Oh, man. I hadn't had a chance to put my days together yet. What's that telling you?
Mm-hmm.
Busy.
Oh, I know. No, it's a great show tonight. I enjoyed listening to it. And
thank you.
Leighton, awesome. Man, I would love to come up there. I bet it's awesome to hunt up there. But what you were saying, and even Kenny made the comment, different parts of the country. Texas is where I'm from.
Yes,
We're quote unquote, we're the newcomers on the block in the United States, basically. We don't, we've got all this history here, but not as far as the old colonial coins or like where Kenny and them are, the Civil War stuff. Right. We had, very little Civil War action here at all. I mean, we have think three battles here in Texas, and that's all we had.
Yep.
But still, you've got history in its own.
I was going to say, you must have some spots where otherwise you wouldn't be into the metal detecting, where you felt as if these three battles were of importance. And I'll tell you, I know a couple of guys from Texas, and boy, they've got some fantastic buttons.
Oh yeah, there is. There's a couple that were actually. We had several prisoner of war camps here.
Yeah.
And just north of Houston, a lot of them are off limits. Some of it, private farms next to it, you can get to it.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to really do your history, because they marched a lot of the Union prisoners that they captured in Galveston, marched them from Galveston up to the little town of Hempstead, Texas, just north of Houston. And if you can find that route, and there's several guys that have, and pulled several good bullets out of there. And bullets and buttons, too.
Yes, sir. And like Kenny has mentioned earlier, if you find that encampment area, oh man.
Oh yeah.
You're gonna be swinging like an ape, looking for that last banana.
Oh, you bet. You bet. Well, guys, like I say, it's a great show. Just want to call in and thank everybody. And great show, Josh.
All right. Thanks for the call, Chris.
See you later, buddy.
Take care. Bye.
Hey, guys, I think I'm going to go, too, because I've noticed online that there's people trying to get in.
Okay, Steve. Thanks for calling.
Okay. Before you go, Steve, why don't you throw your YouTube channel out there for the listeners?
Okay, so it's just, I believe, let me see here. You know what I'll do is I will post it on your comments.
Okay.
I'll post the actual spot on YouTube for your comments, and
That's
people
the one
can
with
see it.
the
They can
D-ring.
watch.
Yeah.
That is the one with all the gold. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for the call.
Just one more comment with you guys. You were talking about your finds and where you put your rings and stuff like that, and leaving them on the bumpers of your vehicles. And I was going to tell you, the one thing you also don't want to do is leave your finds in your pockets when your wife is washing your clothes. because I was sitting in my living room and I was hearing all this banging going around in my dryer, and I ran in there and my War of 1812 breastplate was whipping around in the in the dryer.
Oh man, that's not. I wouldn't even admit that.
One find you weren't
clean.
intending to tumble.
I bet it was.
All right, well, great to hear from you,
tonight.
Steve.
Great show. Good to hear Leighton again, and God bless you guys, and you have a good evening, okay?
You too.
Steve.
Mr. Denny Morrison.
Hi, Josh.
How goes it, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. I got a couple comments. When you first started the show, you talked about finding lead in lakes.
Right.
Here in Ohio, we have, especially in Lima, there's a reservoir there. It was built in 1911. And my buddy and I went there looking
for
that
reservoir.
A ring for a fella that it came from his grandfather. It came from Belgium someplace. We never did find the ring, but in a week's time, every day, each of us hauled out 6 pounds of lead sinkers. And we did find a couple of 3-ringer sinkers in that lake.
Wow.
So, 330,000 soldiers came from Ohio, and they lived somewhere, and they went fishing somewhere. So they brought that stuff home and they used it. So that
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask Leighton, what kind of a scoop do you use in the water?
Good question.
Yeah, thanks for the question. That's a good question, actually. I'll tell you, I've evolved over the past 10 or 15 years. I started out with aluminum scoops because I was doing mostly the the dry sand. Then I worked my down towards the wet sand, and then I was trying to find more virgin areas, if you will. And then that's when I started transforming into a water hunter, and then diving, and of course that all just kind of went into everything. So to answer your question, I started out with aluminum. There were 10-inch scoops. I have since, in the last 5 or 6 years, gone to a stainless steel scoop. It has a stainless, no sir,
okay.
A stainless steel handle.
Yeah.
Everything. It's heavy. It is
but
counterbalanced.
They are sturdy. They're durable.
They are extremely sturdy. But I will tell you, I've gone through a couple of them too. I've had them welded and re-welded. I've put tips on them. Here, it's not your actual. It's not your average. How can I say average beach? Here, when we get a nor'easter, we get the winds 50, 70, 80 miles an hour. It puts what they call, or what we call, or we come to call, a cut. The cut will take away, 4 or 5 feet of sand at times, and that's when you have everybody and his brother down there digging. Now, what doesn't get blown away are the rocks. And now when I say rocks, I'm talking rocks the size, or half the size, of a basketball. And so you have to get in and around those and move them, and it certainly will take its toll on those scoops.
Well, that's usually where the gold lands, even when you have water. It goes around wherever the rocks are at. That's where I always hunt at.
Yes,
but
sir.
I have a wooden handled shovel that I've had for 20 years, and it's got a stainless steel bottom to it and a kickstand on it. Mm-hmm. And it cost me $125 at the time, and I think they're probably up around $200 now.
Yes, sir.
And I also use a stainless steel hand scoop. Mm-hmm. Mine is so wore out from digging down in Florida. And they have cuts down there, too, when the hurricanes come in. Right. And one time I was down there, and it was blowing so hard, I was staying down there, and I said, I'm going to the beach, and the storm had just passed. I actually had a handkerchief over my face just so I could breathe.
Right.
And I didn't even need a metal detector, although I had one. I had my trusty Tesoro over there that I use. And there were gold rings laying right on top of the ground. Everything else had blowed away. You could just walk along top of the ground because it was hard packed and just pick up the gold rings. Didn't even need a metal detector.
Yeah, well, I always love the sight finds, that's for sure. The eyeball finds are more than fun to find, that's for sure. We had quite a few of them a couple of years ago when Sandy went through. I think I had about 12 of them on top that particular season.
Another question for you. Do you use a wetsuit when you water hunt? I mean, I'm not talking diving. I'm just talking about walking in the water.
Okay, depending on the time of the year, yes. This time of the year, no, I'm not using a wetsuit any longer. January, February, no. But yeah, all the way up into December, I'm using a 6mm. I also, it's a good point that you brought up too with the handkerchief to put over your face. I also have it's almost like a light hoodie that I'll put on. That's maybe 3mm, just to keep that sand from blowing in your face. Right. I look like something from the Black Lagoon when I'm going down, but when I come back, I'll tell you, a lot of people say, how can I do it? But I don't know about you, but one gold ring in the pouch, all of a sudden makes 40-degree water about 70.
That's right.
Do you
Suddenly
have a dry
you
suit?
forget about the elements.
I do not. Yeah, you forget about the elements, Josh. No, I don't have a dry suit, but I will tell you here, I use an insulated pair of waders through the end of December, all the way through right through the spring. And so that's what I use, and it doesn't hurt to use some kind of, also thermals or something like that underneath. So
another quick question.
Sure.
Have you ever got stung by, what the heck?
Jellyfish?
Stingray? Jellyfish?
Yeah.
I grew up on the beach. To answer your question, yes, many times.
Okay.
To me, it's just another something in my way. I just kind of don't even worry about it anymore. I don't know if I've come immune to them or what, but now that doesn't mean that I haven't been stung where I'd had to get out of the water, but I always use a long sleeve, even if it's just a small shorty on top.
Right.
Or a slim suit that we use. It's very thin, a couple millimeter thick, just enough to push the stuff out of our way. Now, that doesn't mean that I'll be walking towards them if I see them. But yeah, they do get in the way. They're just a pain in the butt for me.
How close have you come to a shark?
Well, sharks, I don't know if you've heard, but recently we've got a lot of great whites in our area. Yep. Personally, just a lot of sand sharks, that's all. I've never encountered any other type of sharks, not while I've been doing any type of metal detecting. But I will say stingrays, yes.
Yeah, stingrays are bad, too.
Yeah, that's why we do what we call the Cape Cod Shuffle. We don't have stingrays per se here that are dangerous, but, when I'm down in Mexico doing the water hunt, yeah, I'm always doing the Cape Cod Shuffle. I'll just push my feet along.
Them babies, look out.
Yes, sir. I've hunted with a gentleman a couple of years ago. We were down in Cancun, and he got stung right near the groin area, and I will tell you, it put a damper on everybody's hunt.
Yeah.
So it's not just, let's be honest, we're down there together. I'm not going to continue if he's hurt. So, It did put a damper on it for a few hours, but, he manned up and he had one leg bigger than the other, but we managed to finish out the day, and we did pretty well.
Yeah. I can tell you here in Ohio, and that's where Josh and I live, and even in his lake where he lives, in the summertime I always wear a shorty wetsuit because I'm in the water 8 to 9 hours, and you get hypothermia if you don't.
That's
Even
correct.
Even though it's warm as it is out, you'd think you wouldn't, but when you're in the water, it happens.
Good point. I'm glad that you brought that up. Yeah, a lot of people think that, you're out there and, it doesn't take much. I think actually the first signs of hypothermia are around, 92 degrees, your body temperature. So it's not that much different than your normal body temperature before you start to shiver. And by that point, it's already actually a little bit too late. So
as soon as
good
your
point to
teeth
bring it
start
up.
to chatter, you're in trouble.
That's it.
Grandma Tam on here said that she's worried about the carps. I was down at St. Mary's Lake, and the carp went right through my legs. Scared the living bejeebies out of me.
Oh, yeah, we've got them big enough down here, you could just about hand them a machine, too.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
carps aren't going to hurt you.
Right.
Well, they got to eat, too,
That's
right. Well, it's just the idea that they
take a
came
bag
right
of marshmallows and just throw them out on the bottom.
That's right.
Take care of it.
All right. Well, thanks for the call, Denny.
All right. Talk to y'all later. Good to hear all of you.
Hey,
right.
See
you, Denny.
And we've still got another caller on here, Swansea.
Hey, Josh, how you doing, buddy?
All right.
I got a question for Leighton. Again, he's up in my neck of the woods. Hey, Leighton, this is Brandon. I'm from southwestern New Hampshire.
Okay, go ahead, buddy.
I do a lot of detecting in Massachusetts, and I know you do a lot of beach hunting. Do you do a lot of land hunting as well?
Yes, I actually started that way. I wish I had. Maybe we can do another show. I can tell you exactly, how it unfolded. Although I did grow up on the beach and started down there, we did mostly land hunting because I was such a young man at the time. I didn't have my way of getting around other than my bicycle. So, 1972, I was 12. So for the first 4 or 5 years of my life, I had that thing strapped to my sissy bar on the back of my Huffy bike and went all over town with it. So yeah, I did a lot of schoolyards.
Here's a question that I had for you, right on that same line, Glenn, is do you notice that in Massachusetts, whereas I had the same thing in New Hampshire, people are so interested in the history of our own area that permission is not a problem?
I'm running into a little bit of issues lately, especially on public land, believe it or not. Not so much the privates. The public, for some reason, has gotten it into their head that we are, digging holes, leaving our trash behind. And now this is just personal experience in this last season alone. I've been asked to leave on 3 or 4 different public properties that I've never had an issue with ever in over the 40 years I've been hunting. Now, I always ask when I'm asked to leave, are they sure it's me that's leaving the holes, and why I say that. And I try to say this with as straight a face as possible, and I'm sure you'll understand what I'm talking about. 2 things come to mind right away. One, it's usually a dog park, and the dogs are digging the holes, and I've never yet seen a dog cover a hole up yet. And
right.
2, squirrels are so prevalent in our area that they make so many holes that I am afraid that these people are being misguided or judged because, again, I've never seen a squirrel, after him finding his nut, cover his hole up and then go back to his tree. So I'm not saying that to be a wise guy. I just don't think that they're really thinking the picture through. So I don't know why this past year it's been an issue. I have been hunting the parks a little bit earlier, so maybe I'm a little more visible. That could be the issue. I don't know. But private property, no, I'm usually pretty good with the privates. If you ask nicely and you show them what you got and let them take their pick before you leave, I usually don't have any problems getting permission.
That's funny you mention that because
90% of what I do is farm fields, hay fields, stuff like that too. And I've only had one in Massachusetts. Of course, it's northern Massachusetts. To me, it's the Northfield, Greenfield, Hadley, that type of area.
Very familiar with it.
I've only had one ever tell me no, and I've had great luck. And I can only say there's only been one that's ever even wanted one of my finds. They're just more curious about what the history of the area is. They seem to be more hospitable even than New Hampshire is.
Right. Yep. I mean, I'm right there with you. I know Kenny wanted to say something in there.
Yeah, go ahead, Kenny.
I was just referring to the permissions. From my experience, it just takes one guy that not to hold his ethics strong enough to ruin it for the others. And another thing is when you get TV shows coming on with guys pulling out with an excavator trying to ask for permission, that doesn't help either.
Right.
But, used to, there for a while, what I did was I printed out a before and after. I actually dug a hole. I took a picture of where I was going to dig a hole, and then I dug it, and I put the plug back, and, I did all the replant the seed thing, and which isn't a bad idea, depending on the property you're hunting. But then it got to be more, here comes a guy with a bunch of papers that they don't like seeing that either. So around here, it's pretty much, hey, you just be honest with what you're doing. And, you tell them, hey, I'm a man of my word. I'm going to leave your property like I found it. If not, I won't be back.
That's it.
It's usually not that big of a problem if you're just on the up and up.
Right.
Well, you never have to remember the truth. You always got to remember the lie. So, yeah, I'm the same way. I always say, listen, if you'd like to even, in fact, join us a lot of times we'll take an extra metal detector with us, and if you are more than welcome to come with us and have at it yourself. And if you want to join us, I'll even show you how to use it. You know, so a lot of times, in fact, I just came back from a trip down south, Kentucky and Tennessee area, and that's in fact what we did. And you would not believe the permissions that we gained while we were there just by knocking on the door and inviting them to come along with us.
Right.
It really, really helped.
I like to show them, too, what I found in the local area, you know, as far as buttons, buckles, anything like that. That kind of sparks an interest. And that's kind of why I bring a little box around with me every single time. But I have noticed that I'm guessing certain areas are more prone to be acceptable to having people come on and take a look at what could possibly be on the land. And you also show them the trash, because then they're saying, okay, well, you're pulling the lead out of the ground, these pieces of iron. I don't know if it's the same way across the country. Denny, you could probably answer that question. But I know up here in the Northeast, we have such a long history of time, you know, like you were talking about earlier, Leighton.
Yeah.
That our history goes back to the 1600s.
Right.
I show them the 1600s coins. I show them the King Georges. I show them the mass coppers. I show them the War of 1812 buttons, and they say, well, I don't think there's anything here, but you're welcome to try it. And if you at least show them what's there, I think it sparks an interest, and you're going to get that word of mouth to the next person. Oh, well, Farmer John down the road, he's got a big 300-acre farm, and it seems to work.
Right. Yeah, while we were down south, that's exactly the same scenario that just unfolded with us when we went down. You know, well, I don't think there's anything on my property, but if you'd like to try it, go ahead. Well, don't you know I found an infantry button right in his front yard. I offered it to the gentleman. He said, absolutely not. I just want to know what the history was. I was always told they came through here, and this proves it. So, you know, he was nice enough to let me keep it, and he really, really was insistent upon me keeping it. Otherwise, I'd give it to him. It's a button, you know. I just appreciated him letting me go on his property.
Right.
But yeah, and then here's the best part about it. As we're leaving that particular day, he says, "Oh, by the way, I got another 50 acres up the road."
Nice.
Don't you love
it? You can't beat that.
Yeah. So he now has his own metal detector. He is very avid in swinging. He's a retired gentleman, and he's offered me back many, many times, anytime I want. So, you know, I'm going to take the guy up on it.
Well, yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for
that, Leighton. I just had that question for you, and I appreciate the answer.
Hey, thanks for the call, buddy. Good to hear from you.
All right, have a good night, guys.
Yes, sir, you too.
You know, another interesting point, too, you had said you originally started out with the aluminum scoop, and I'm sure you found as you moved closer to the water's edge and into the water, the need to have a more durable scoop. And sometimes that's part of the being versatile, is that, you know, maybe you don't necessarily want to just jump right out there and buy whatever's available. Do your research. Sometimes you're more ahead in the long run to save up the money and buy the better piece of gear than to just grab whatever and then find out, say, a year down the road that, oh, well, it's not, I'm going to have to buy another one now. And because much like yourself, I don't have the need for a scoop very often, but when I do, I bit the bullet from the beginning and bought a nice stainless steel scoop. And we're talking all stainless steel, handle.
That's correct. Yep, that's right. And you know,
right.
Let
me jump in here real quick. Sorry, Leighton. Man, it has been a pleasure meeting you and listening to you, man. I look forward to talking to you again in the future. I'm going to bug out of here, Josh.
All right.
Great show again. Thanks to all the listeners for tuning in. It's great to have this show back on the air. And get out there and dig something, everybody. And I will catch you later. You can find me at DirtBandit33 on YouTube. I also have HardcoreRelicRecovery.com for all the Amazon shoppers, and I'm on Facebook. With that, we'll catch you next week.
All right. We'll see you, Kenny.
Thanks a lot, Kenny. Hey, it was a pleasure, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Have a good night.
Definitely a great guy and a return guest himself. Great to talk to Kenny anytime. He's always welcome.
But anyway, just to reiterate on that scoop, I definitely listen. When people ask me what they should buy or what is my suggestion, I always tell them, especially with a metal detector, you don't have to buy the lowest brand, I would say. I wouldn't say brand. How can I say this? The cheapest model or whatever.
Right.
Step it up at least maybe a couple notches. Try somewhere in the mid-range. You don't want to have to rebuy something next season if you start to really enjoy it. I'm not saying go spend $2,000, but maybe a few $100 anyway, $400 or $500 if you can swing it. If not, save your money until you can, because I would hate to see you come back to me and say, well, you said, we don't want that in this industry.
And I think that you'll find, too, with people like that, if they do that, they are better satisfied in the long run.
Absolutely. So, this scoop, I use a Stavar scoop. It's from Russia. One of the better ones I've ever bought. I have had to repair it a few times, but I will tell you, I beat it to death. I use it. I use my equipment. I try not to abuse it. I use it in the way it is intended, but just, time and, you're talking 50, sometimes 60 hours a week, of constant prying on the lower cage end of it. It will take its toll. I don't care how good of a welder it is that put it together.
That's right. Denny.
Hi, Josh. I had one more comment for us Ohio boys or anybody in the snowy area. If you want to go hunting someplace, find a nice hill that's facing the south where the sun hits it, and it's got a lot of leaves on it. And I just about bet you can go metal detecting and
That's
find
a good
something.
point.
Yeah, I've hunted many hills, and I always pick the south side, just like a Civil War camp. I would pick the south side where to put my hut at or my tent. I'd pick the south side so I got the most sun through all the day that I could get. So, but when I go metal detecting in the woods, I always look for the south side.
Right.
And before most of the trees were there, it was probably a sledding area. I hunted a place and must have taken 300 Wheaties out of one area, just where they went down the hill at. But it was all trees now.
Right.
So,
all right.
that. Good place. There's got to be a hill over there in St. Mary someplace.
Oh, there is.
All right, you guys take care now.
You
Bye.
too. Thanks for the call.
Yep.
Next time.
Yep, bye now.
Now, before we go, though, I got to hear this monkey tree story.
I was hoping I got away with that. Well, quickly, this is it's not a very big story, but it's a funny one. I was told by a local historian in another town close to here, within an hour's ride. He says to me one day, as we're going from metal detecting spot to metal detecting spot, we had done the Back Bay area, and so he jumps in my truck, and we're going to try to locate this sterling ring that this elderly woman had thrown out her back door when she had gotten mad at her daughter for something she had done. So on the ride to this woman's house, he says to me, as we're driving, he says, "You see that tree right there we just went by?" I said, "Yeah, why?" He says, "Turn around, I want to show you something." I said, "Okay." So I turn around, I park across the street. He says, "You see the big hollow piece up in the front on the top of that tree?" And this tree is about 300 years old. I said,
Oh,
"Yeah."
wow.
He says to me, he says, "That there is the monkey tree." I said, "What do you mean the monkey tree? What the heck does that mean?" He goes, "Well, the legend has it that a local captain had stored all his booty in the backyard in his shed, I guess, and he had a pet monkey that he used to bring to sea with him. Well, when he came back, the monkey used to like the jewels, and evidently got into the jewels with the bag, ran up the tree, and dropped it down the middle of the tree. So,
Oh, wow.
Okay, you're probably thinking, and I'm sure everyone else is thinking about this as we're talking about it, or as I'm mentioning a story, why didn't they cut down the tree? Well, that was my first question, too. And till this date, the tree is still standing. Is there jewels in it? I don't know. I haven't had a chance to go over to it and swing my detector near it. Jewels aren't going to obviously get picked up by a metal detector, but who knows what else is with them, right?
That's right. If he was grabbing jewels, maybe he grabbed rings
Gold
or
coin
chains
or something. Yeah,
right.
who knows? But yeah, that's the story. It's a monkey tree, and of course he tells it much better. But it's his story, not mine. So, but that's what I remember of it. It's the monkey tree.
Wow.
Yeah, the Indian cave that Steve Zulik was earlier mentioning was a great place. Same guy. His name is Bob. He's a local historian up there in that town I was just talking to you about. And
Right.
he was asked by the local historical society to try to locate or relocate this Indian cave. And after about, they knew about it. It just had been forgotten for so many years, a good 100 years. It had been written about prior to. It was on a piece of property that he actually maintained.
Oh.
For an elderly lady, and he had looked for it for about 3 or 4 months. The problem was when he was looking for it. He was looking for it during the summer. Well, you know as well as I do, here in New England we have what we call bullbriars. Bullbriars
The
are
overgrowth
nasty.
probably hit it.
It's terrible. Yes. So don't you know? After 3 months, he actually had some coordinates, but they were really kind of like paces. Somebody had written in a book, it was like 60 paces off the northeast corner of the property, and, things had gotten changed over the years, and then they said, go in a direction of so many paces, and all this other, it was almost like a treasure map.
Right.
And he never did find it until about the 3rd month. For 3 months he had been eating his lunch on top of it.
Wow.
Yeah, he had been sitting on what they call now Devil's Footprint Rock. I actually have one of the last. This is a sad story, actually. It's fun because he relocated it and was able to document. I actually was the guy that took the documentation pictures for the local historical place.
Oh,
and,
very cool.
Yeah, so they used a lot of my pictures, and it's up there right now. And anybody who wants to go and see them, they're more than welcome to. It's quite a place. Steve and I got the chance to go inside the cave. There had been, we didn't find any. Had we did find any arrowheads or anything like that, we would have certainly turned them over. But prior to us getting there, they did have some archaeologists back in the 60s or 30s or something like that. It was quite a long time ago. It was almost 100 years that they had put into the into the museum, and but we weren't lucky enough to find any. But anyway, my point is that he did find it. He had been sitting on top of this cave for 3 months eating his lunch every single day, and when he finally dropped something, it kind of clinked down into this little hole, and he heard it go skaploosh. So he knew there was water there, and that's where it was. Right there. He had been sitting on top of it the whole time. For 3 months, sitting on top of an Indian cave that he never even knew about. So when we went down inside, we could see where they had used it. It had a natural opening for, you could see all the smoke and the soot where they were cooking. They had a stretching board down there. Now, when I say board, it was actually a stretching stone. There was a pottery area. You could see some shards here and there that were really, really tiny, small ones. What else was in there? You could see where they were sharpening knives and making flint stones. It was. You could see where they actually had a bed, and then on the outside of this rock formation, which is about, I'd say, 100 square feet around, it actually had 2 bed areas and a lookout area where you could see they positioned the stone so they could hide behind it for ambushing.
Wow.
It was pretty cool. I have a lot of the pictures if you want. I'll put them up on my Facebook. If anybody wants to go there, they can just check it out.
Yeah, definitely.
All I gotta do is,
it sounds like it was an interesting experience for sure.
Now, this is the sad part about it. Since then, this is about 2 years ago when we were able to get in there and kind of look around. About a year ago, some developers have come in. And I know when I say, yeah, exactly. So when I say developers, you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
They actually really disturbed the whole area, and it's no longer in existence. So some of the stones are still there. It's not a cave any longer. It is now just pretty much flat. I have the only existing pictures that are in existence of the in and out and inside of this cave. I got some video of it, and I have the last known existing picture. of the devil's footprint that was actually chiseled into the stone.
Well, that's very cool that at least you still have the photo documentation.
Yes, and we have since brought this to the town, and I guess they're doing some type of, I don't know if they're looking into it or what, but, there's a lot of natives that are in the area that have really, in a way, have told us there's really not much you can do. Once it's destroyed, but, is there penalties? I really don't know. I never got into that, and it's been a good year or so since I've actually got into that. Although I like history, and I really am saddened by what happened to this, I'm not into native artifacts like a lot of other guys are.
Right.
Yes, I like finding points and stuff like that, but it's not my criteria. It's not something I'm really into.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think, one of the great things about the hobby is not only are we collecting finds, we're collecting these experiences like that, as well as helping to document the past.
Absolutely, yeah. We do that all the time. A lot of us do it without even realizing it, just by saving our finds and putting them in display cases. And,
that's right.
You're documenting when it was found. You remember. I can tell you even stuff that I've had for 40 years. I can tell you where I found it and probably the month I found it and where and how deep it was. It's sick.
Right.
It's just one of these things that you just learn to do over time. And that's part of the fun.
Yeah, and that's one of the odd bits about the hobby, I guess you could say. Some of us may not even be able to tell you what we did, say, 2 weeks ago.
Right.
But when it concerns a find, it could be a find from, such as you said, 40 years ago. Right. And we can say, oh yeah, I found this at such and such place with this machine. It was about this deep, and probably even walk out there and be within 10 feet of where you found it.
Yeah, I was looking at some of my rings that I had found. In fact, I have one from 1972, and it was an antique then. It's only a little tiny brass ring. It's got a little tiny red stone in it, and it's got some almost like rays coming off or around the stone, and it's got two naked women on the side of it. I don't know what it stands for, but it's very old. But I was just looking at it the other day, and I can remember finding it probably my first year in metal detecting, 1972. I've had it for all these years. A lot of people ask me if I sell my stuff. No, I don't sell. I enjoy bringing it to places and being asked about it. That's the fun I get.
Right. Sometimes it's better to keep it just to show it off to people, not showing it off in the sense of gloating per se. Right. But just to display what can be found.
Well, it's almost like how can I explain it? This is how I get rewarded. It's almost like if you go into a shop and you see a whole bunch of Hummels on the shelf, and you take one Hummel and you bring it home. It doesn't have or perceive the same existence by being by itself. So that's why I never sell anything. Because if you take that Hummel and you bring it back to the shop and you put it back on that glass, now it becomes this whole array of beautiful Hummels that everybody enjoys.
Right, it's a piece of the larger
It's a piece of the larger pie, exactly. And that's what I try to explain to people. It's the same thing with a ring. If I was to sell one ring, then my whole collection is not a collection any longer. It's just one piece of it. And they're not worth much. Realistically, what are they? $5,
Right.
They're sterling. They're $2, $1. It's the finding that's important. That's what really gets me going. How did that get lost? Who was it that lost it? How did they lose? Especially how they lost it is really interesting to me.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And what does
the
it
whole
signify?
Backstory to the find.
Yeah. What does it signify? Like I told you about this ring that's made of brass. It's a piece of junk. It's probably worth 20 cents. But it's got two naked ladies on the side of it. Not that doesn't make it cool, because I thought that was actually a cool thing to find when I was 12 years old.
Right.
And it's got this little tiny red stone on the top of it. But what was the signification of it? Did someone give it to someone as a gift, or was it a present to commemorate 16 years old, or who knows? You could put any story you wanted with it. It's pretty cool.
Right. The possibilities are limitless.
Right. Exactly.
Well then, It's certainly been great sitting down and talking with you.
My pleasure.
We've certainly covered some interesting topics, and there were some other ones I would have liked to have gotten into, and the way it sounds, there were even some on your end as well. We'll have to have you back again sometime. You're certainly more than welcome back anytime.
Thanks a lot, Josh. I appreciate it. It was a pleasure.
Before you go, anything you'd like to plug, a YouTube channel, anything like that?
Yeah, they can look me up. Just look it up under Leighton Harrington. It's and I also have the Witter channel there. So go in there, check out the YouTubes, and I've got a lot of do's and don'ts, and I got a lot of actual digs. They're not staged. I'm sure you'll see that it's not something that looks fictitious. Let's put it that way. I always try to do the real deal.
Right.
You can check out my page, my web page there, and if not, you can also go to Facebook. Look me up there. I got a lot of pictures. If you enjoy looking at some of the older finds that I've gotten over the years, more than welcome to browse through them.
Absolutely, and you've done very well for yourself.
Thanks.
Too.
Thank you.
Hang in there with me for a minute, Leighton, and we'll get out of here. For everybody that's tuned in, we appreciate you dropping in to hear the chat tonight. If you enjoyed the show, by all means, rate the channel, throw me a comment. Hey, you want to be a guest on the show sometime, or a topic you'd like to hear covered, drop me a line. I'm not hard to deal with, it's pretty painless, and we'll see what we can do. For everyone else, myself, Leighton Harrington, thanks for tuning in. Check us out next week, folks. We'll see ya.